At 6:50 there will be a guided mantra meditation. At 7 o'clock a temple ceremony. And from 8 o'clock onwards there will be more kirtan, a singing of mantras. And for our talk, we are very delighted to invite His Grace Janinivas Prabhu. Please welcome him with a big Haribol. Haribol! He is from Germany, but he came into contact with Krishna consciousness here in Switzerland. He joined this temple as a monk in 2009 and lived here for several years. Later he traveled with his spiritual masters and serving him around the world in Europe, in South Africa, in Australia and in India. Later he moved to Australia where he became a yoga teacher, and for a couple of years now he's back in Germany, made studies in the field of social work and is working in the field with children with autism. And now we are very happy that he is currently visiting Switzerland, and he is going to talk on a topic of meditation, with the title Meditation, Yoga's Prime Technique. So we are very happy.
Good that you remind me.
And before we start, two requests. Please come a little forward. Please fill the space here in the front. And braucht jemand eine Übersetzung in die deutsche Sprache? Okay. Manu Prabhu, wird eine deutsche Übersetzung geben in dieser Ecke. So jede Person, die eine Übersetzung braucht, kann sich dann dort hinsetzen. And so I wish you a very nice Sunday. Hare Krishna.
Very personal special guest.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Hare Krishna. I've been plentifully introduced. Wow, yes. So you know a little bit who I am. Maybe more than me. Okay, she wants to go. And you've all been singing, chanting very nicely. I've joined for the last bit as well, but just to set a sort of traditional form and mood to this philosophical talk, we'll sing a little more and then dive a little bit into the philosophy of yoga and meditation. I'll be speaking today mostly on this little big book here, the Bhagavad Gita. A bit over 600 verses of wisdom from India in the old Vedic days, a book, well, way beyond 5,000 years, some believe, old. And combine the ideas of the Bhagavad Gita a little bit with a book that might not be quite so familiar to some of you, which is called the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. And these two books basically build the basis of most of the yogic understanding we have of this world of yoga. So today we'll just want to explore a little bit, what is this word yoga actually, where does it come from, what does it mean, and what are the different ways to practice it, and what are the conclusions for us. And what are like the main things and techniques that might have to do with yoga? Well, the title of the class spoiled it a little bit, but we'll see where we go. So I'll just sing for a short while a song that I really appreciate. It's a song by a great saint called Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who lived not too long ago on this planet in Bengal. And he was a poet and musician, as well as many other things, and he wrote a song called Radha Madhava, which just basically gives a little window, a little perspective on, well, the reality of God and his daily habits and activities according to, well, this Vedic perspective on life. So if you know it, sing along, otherwise it's just nice to listen. There's just 4 lines, and it's describing Radha Madhava. So Krishna. To the very right here we have Jagannath with the big eyes, very happy to see us all. And this is the form of Krishna, and the song is dedicated to him and his consort and his girlfriend that perform pastimes, perform amorous games, perform the eternal dance of origin. We sang this mantra now. Okay, I'll talk a little bit before we sing. We sang this mantra now, this Hare Krishna, right? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And in a sense, the song that we're about to sing now is the same song, just with a bit more detail or a bit more descriptions to what it's actually going on. Because in this mantra we have three words, Hare Krishna and Rama. And Krishna and Rama, well, that's this gentleman to the very right, the black man with the big eyes. And they are both names, Krishna meaning the center of everything, the center as well as the origin of everything, and Rama meaning the one who gives eternal pleasure, or is the source of all pleasure. So, and then we have this other word, Hare, which I was just saying, this gentleman to the very right, he has like a girlfriend, Radharani, whose name is also Hare. And already in this mantra we see a little bit the mood of this whole philosophy that, the perception of the Supreme, of God, is that he's not boring or stale, but he's actually a man of music and of dance. And often the question is asked, is God a man or a woman? Well, the answer of this tradition is both, right? And in two aspects, like a little bit like yin and yang, if you know that from some perspective, that the totality of reality is represented through these two aspects, Hare and Krishna. So this mantra that we were just singing is basically the dance of the Absolute. And it's quite sweet. We have the male aspect, Krishna, and this female aspect, Hare, and they dance with each other. First together, Hare Krishna, then they separate a little bit. Krishna, Krishna, to one side, Hare, Hare. And if you think about Krishna meaning the center of receiving pleasure, then in this first part of the mantra, Hare, the female part, is basically dancing around Krishna. Krishna is in the center. And then we move to just another aspect. We continue with the mantra Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now the roles are reversed. Now Krishna is taking the role of the one who gives pleasure, Rama. And Hare is receiving that pleasure. But again, they come together. Now Radharani in the center, Hare Rama, then they separate, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So it's a mystical way to describe the original dance of the Absolute, of the Supreme. Very mystical, to the point that certain yogis will chant and meditate on this mantra for, 50, 60, 70 years, their whole life, and may claim that they still haven't reached the actual understanding of what it means. Because with these sort of meditations, of mantra meditation, especially with the called Maha Mantra, the great mantra, we really try to enter our source, the origin of ourselves, and the therefore springing perspective on life. So this song of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, even though in the same mood, is a bit more detailed. We're talking about Jaya Radha Madhava. Again, we have this couple, Radha and Krishna, Radha Madhava. Kunja Bihari, who are, basically performing their pastimes in Vrindavan, in their home place. And it's describing a little bit the pastimes of Krishna. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopichana Vallabha Giri Varadhari. He's the one who gives pleasure to his friends and girlfriends. He does certain pastimes, like casually lifting a hill. We won't get into that too much. Yashoda Nandana. He's the sources of greatest pleasure to his mother Yashoda. Braja Jana Ranjana, and to all the residents of, Braj, or this world. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. And his favorite pastime is to walk along the banks of a river in the forests. So it's a little window, this song, a little picture into the spiritual world as understood by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And again, if you know it, sing along. Otherwise, just listen a little bit. And then we'll continue a little less esoteric. We'll go down to yoga and Sanskrit and all these things. Okay, so. Someone can play Mridanga? Oh. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Prachachana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Prachachana Ranjana Yashoda Yashoda Nandana Prachachana Ranjana Yashoda Yashoda Nandana Prachachana Ranjana Yashoda Yamuna Tira Vanam Chari Yamuna Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashoda Nandana Prachachana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Yashoda Nandana Prachachana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Shri Radha Madhava ki, Jai Shri Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki, Jai Shri Prabhupada ki. Okay. So, I'll read a little bit, just one verse from the Bhagavad Gita that I really like, and it sort of fits the topic. And we'll continue like in sort of this traditional way of opening the class. And if you like, you can repeat after me. Another beautiful mantra, actually. Okay, I'll just introduce the mantra first. It's Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. It's the starting verse of one of the, oldest and most philosophical texts we have on this planet, called the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it's really an opening to invite spirit in the furthest sense. You must all know Om. It's like quite common little thing. Om is basically, it's interesting when we really chant Om from A, U, M, from the whole range, we're basically going through all the range of the sounds that our mouth can produce. A is the very guttural sound, it starts down in the throat, and M is the very tip of the mouth. If you then it's really, the sound comes from the front here. So if we go through the full range of chanting Om, Om, could do it for a while, but just keep it in theory. Then we go through the whole range of our mouth movement, and of course there's many ways to look at this little mantra, but that already represents that Om basically is a mantra, or is a bija mantra, like just in 3 syllables it contains, or it represents spiritual reality as a whole. So with Om we're basically opening up to the possibility beyond this material world that we can immediately perceive. So this mantra starts with that, Om, so we're opening up this possibility. And then of course the question is, where do we want to go within that spiritual realm that we are trying to invoke? But even more important than where do we want to go is how do we want to go there. And this is the next word, Namo. So Namo represents our mood on how we should approach spirit. And you might know from India, Namaste or so. Nama is like, Namo means, it represents the mood of humility. I'm approaching spirit through humility. I'm knocking on the door of spirit with folded hands. That's the Namo. And then the question, of course, is on which door am I knocking? Bhagavate, of the Supreme Being. Bhagavan is one of the Bhagavad Gita we are reading from. Bhagavad Gita. The Gita means song in Sanskrit, and Bhagavat, of the Supreme, of Bhagavan. So this is the song of the Supreme. This is how the book is called. And Om Namo Bhagavate, toward that same Supreme Being. And of course, if we are thinking about the absolute reality, if we're talking about a relative reality, like myself, then you might ask me my name and I'll say it's Janinivas or Jan. I even have 2. But the number of names is relative to my being, whereas if we are approaching the absolute, there is unlimited forms and unlimited names in which it can express itself. He, she can express themselves. So Om Namo Bhagavate, and then I knock on the door of the Supreme. I open up the possibility to spirit, Om. I knock with folded hands, Namo, in humility. And then on which door am I knocking? Bhagavate, of the Supreme. And then the question is, well, which form, which precise shape of the Supreme or quality, and that's Vasudevaya. And Vasudev is the father of Krishna. So Vasudev with a short A is the father of Krishna, and Vasudevaya, when you make the A long, that indicates the son of him. So is the name of Krishna as well. So this mantra is very nice also, and we can chant it together. So we'll repeat it 3 times if you like. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Om Namo read that verse from the Bhagavad Gita. It's the 6th chapter, Dhyana Yoga, which is the form of yoga that we mostly think of if we think of yoga. And it's the last verse in this chapter. Yoginam api sarvesham matgatenantaratmana srathavan bachate yomam sami yukta tamo mataha. And of all the yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he's the most intimately united with me in yoga, and the highest of all, which is my personal opinion. We'll come back to the verse a little later. Krishna is talking about, in this chapter, Dhyana Yoga. Dhyan, some of you have done maybe yoga. There is this Ashtanga yoga, these 8 limbs of yoga, quite famously. And one of these limbs is dhyana. And dhyana is the Sanskrit word basically for meditation. So dhyana yoga is the yoga of meditation. And yeah, Krishna basically dedicates a whole chapter to this specific form of yoga. So it's probably sort of relevant. Otherwise, why would he talk about it? To Arjuna. We're not going to go in the setting of the whole Bhagavad Gita, but yeah, it's relevant. And this is the form of yoga that we mostly think of. I mean, like if you nowadays hear the word yoga, you probably think about something like touch your toes with the tip of your nose, sort of thing, right? That's often what we sort of think about or imagine when we hear this word yoga. And it's not completely off topic. Yeah, maybe the nose doesn't have to touch the toes. Some might be able to do it. But there is a physical aspect to this form of yoga. But yoga in itself, of course, if we sort of go to a yoga class and the only thing we do is stretch and strengthen our body, then we're sort of missing a little bit the point, because yoga is a word that is just in its relevance and meaning just deeper, much deeper than just a physical exercise. And yoga is actually a word with a specific meaning. It's a Sanskrit word. So Sanskrit is one of the oldest languages that we have on this planet. It's very relevant to our, for example, English, because the grammar I'm using in English stems from Sanskrit. So it's directly related to English, to German, to many other languages. And you can see it in the word Sanskrit itself. It's still very close to the language we use. If you want to translate Sanskrit, and you just let the word sink in, Sanskrit, saintly script, and there you go. That's exactly what it means. It's a holy language, a saintly language that we are speaking, and that still influences the languages of today. So the word yoga is not just a vague concept, it actually has a specific meaning. And I thought it's nice when you go out here today and you can go, like I went to this Bhakti Yoga temple, and your friends might ask, so what does yoga mean? Well, it would be nice to have a little bit of an answer. So if we look at the Sanskrit of yoga, it actually stems from the root word yuj, which means to connect. And so there is different approaches on how to then interpret the word yoga itself, but one that I really like is a process of connection. So the root word of yoga is the word connecting, to connect. And then as a substantive, the word yoga can be seen as a path that leads us to connection. Okay, cool, now we know, you can go home and when your friend asks you, you can say, yeah, I know what yoga means. It means a path of connection. Okay, that's a great answer, but what would be the immediate next question your friend probably is going to ask you? Connect to what? Yes, quite. Isn't it? And I got to go back to the temple and ask again. No, we'll figure it out now. Yes, the next question would be connecting to what? And this basically gives us a hint at the premises that the yogis had back in the days when they were keen on books and philosophies like that. Because one thing that the old yogic tradition was sort of assuming is that we all a little bit forgot who we actually are. That we all live sort of with a certain state of, what's this word? Amnesia? Amnesia? It can happen, right? You have an accident or something and you can't really remember who you actually were. You see people and can't quite recognize them. In a sense, the yogis are claiming that we all are right now existing to a certain degree in such a state. And that one thing that reflects that, in a sense, or that really shows that, is that if we look at spiritual traditions throughout the ages, throughout the different cultures, whoever represents that, if we go to Australia with the indigenous people, or we go into India, we go into, well, even Christianity or Western cultures, then one big question that has driven man to extremes, like to drop family life, to drop, is one big question, and that is the question of who am I really? And it's really a question that if we ask ourselves sincerely is maybe not that easy to answer. Yes, you might get immediately some, no, that's easy to answer. If you ask me who am I, then I can say I'm Janinivas or Jan. I can say I'm 33 years old, I'm a German, body made in Germany, right? Good quality, they say, but I'm not sure anymore these days, but yeah. Right, I can say I'm married, I have a daughter of that and that old, she was just here, she's 14 months old. I can define my circumstances, but the problem with all these circumstances, if I define them, they are by definition temporary. Like, I've not always been 33, believe it or not. Like, actually I've only turned 33 a month ago. Thank you for the wishes. Before I was 32. And there was a time where I was 15, and there was a time where I was 5, and there was a time where I was 1. And there was a time that this body didn't exist at all in this form. Same my name, yes, I can tell you my name, but there might be other friends who call me by completely different names, or if my mother or father just had a different inspiration when I was born, I might have a completely different name. So my name is a very vague sort of idea of who I am. And then I might go like, yeah, but okay, at least one thing is steady, like I have this body, like this is me. Okay, but funny thing here is if I would show you like, let's say 10 pictures of babies and ask you to say which one of these babies is me, you might have a hard time because, believe it or not, but I've changed since that time. Look a little bit different. I was actually blonde and had blue eyes, like my daughter now. I'm wondering if she's going to change. Right? And actually, if you look at science, and science changes all the time, but we have all these cells in our body, and they apparently die off every day and then get reborn in a sense, so we get new cells in the body. And there's different numbers, but some say around 7 years it takes, and every cell in our body has changed entirely. Apparently the cells on our face have changed within 2 weeks. So if you look in the mirror, in 2 weeks you see a different person. No cell in your face seems to be the same then, right? But interestingly enough, due to all these external changes on the question, who am I really, they don't change the fact that I'm pretty certain that it was me all along. Like, I can remember having a child's body and being called different nicknames, and having a completely different cell structure. And I'm the same person today. Okay, so we have a sort of difficult question to ask here is, who am I really, when we try to explain it with temporary ideas. And this doesn't only tend to the body, it also tends to the mind. Like, my desires and ideas of this world when I was pretty young are quite different to how I perceive the world and think about the world now. Like, my mother loves to tell the story. I'm gonna not tell it in full detail. If you want the full detail, call her. She loves to. Like, you know these stories that parents like to tell, like on Christmas or so? that are just designed to get you back for all the annoying things you did when you were a child. So it's one of these stories. And you go like, oh no, shut up, mom. She's going to tell it anyway, right? So we were in Denmark for this holiday. I was 5 years old. And we walked through the streets very peacefully. And then there was this shop and it sold plastic lawnmowers. And I thought, that's great, that's awesome, you know, it's like brilliant. A plastic lawnmower, obviously I gotta have one. A lawnmower, like to mow the grass. Rasenmäher. Yeah. But yeah, for children, for playing, a plastic one. So I thought it was brilliant. It was really great, and my father thought it was completely stupid, and he's never going to buy it. So we had a little conflict there, and I decided to actually show him my disappointment by throwing myself on the ground and crying out very loudly and hammering my fists on the floor. And that didn't help, so I decided to run away, and I ended up like in a dead end, and there was like trash bins, and so I was hiding behind the trash bins and screaming. And they were super embarrassed. Everyone was looking like horrible parents. What did they do to their child? Well, obviously they didn't buy me that lawnmower, so they were in that moment pretty horrible parents. No. But anyway, why am I telling the story? Well, nowadays my interest in lawnmowers, plastic or not, it sort of has ceased. I'm not really fascinated anymore by plastic lawnmowers. Nor is it that when I don't get something I really want, that I first off throw myself on the floor, bang my fists and scream my lungs out. I don't tend to do that very much anymore, right? So, little example. And it would be weird to imagine me like that, isn't it? No? If you just do it for a moment, just have fun, you know. Put me somewhere in like a corner behind some trash bin, screaming my lungs out because I didn't get a plastic lawnmower. It would be quite ridiculous, wouldn't it? Like you would go like, this guy's weird. Right? So, my mind has changed. My desires have changed. What I think that is important in life has changed. And also how I deal with life has changed. Like not screaming my lungs out anymore, but maybe just like tolerating disappointment. Actually, much more has changed. I grew up with my father as a Darwinistic atheist, and for a long time I thought this is the perspective on life that I'm going to maintain. Obviously, it's the only thing that makes sense. Nowadays, I vision life very, very differently. But still, I can remember being that person throwing himself on the floor and hammering and screaming because of a lawnmower. I know that it was me. So the mind has entirely changed. My mind is different. My desires changed. My morals changed. Like, you know, back in the school when it was like, ooh, girls and ooh, boys, right? That changed. Now I have a daughter, so something must have sort of evolved, right? So a lot of things have changed also within the mind. The body changes every day. We get up in a sense. Every day we are, in a sense, reborn. Every few weeks we look into a new phase because the cells have changed. But also the mind has completely transformed through this time. And yet, I sort of remember that all these changes, yeah, I went through them. So, when I'm now asked, who am I, how can I answer with something like, well, I'm a pianist, I play piano. Okay, but have you played piano when you were 5? No. But were you the same person when you were 5? Yes. So the pianist is not really a good argument to describe who I really am, because it's temporary. Well, I might, I don't know, get in an accident, lose a couple of fingers and not be able to play anymore. Well, please bless me that it won't happen, but it's possible. And then I won't be the pianist, but I will still be the same person. Like even you can say, I'm this body. Well, but if you lose an arm, if you lose a limb or something, do you lose something of yourself? No, not really. You just lose an ability to interact with this world. So the yogis were claiming that we have sort of did I say something bad? That we have sort of forgotten to answer the simple question of who are we really. And if you think about it, how are you going to answer it if you're not allowed to answer with anything temporary? Just think for a moment. Like if someone asks you, who are you? But don't use anything temporary. Anything that has changed or will change within your life. Okay, tricky question, no? And then we maybe get a little bit this idea why it's been a question that's bothering humanity forever. Like even modern Western philosophers are bothered by this question. Ancient texts are bothered by this question and everything in between as well. So this question also bothered the yogis. This idea that I lost connection, to now use this word, to who I actually am. I actually cannot, to my and to others' satisfaction, answer this question. At least that's my experience with this question. So then the idea is, okay, if I don't know who I am in essence, then maybe it's a good idea to find a way, to find a cure, to restructure this knowledge in myself. To again realize who I am really. To again, uncover the self. Take all these covers off that we answer, who are you? My name, one cover, my body, another cover, my mind, another cover, and look what's below these covers, discovering the true self. So this is the idea of yoga. And the basic answer that we get if we read, for example, a text like the Gita, if we listen to a person like Prabhupada, this gentleman here represented by this statue, he gave thousands of classes all over the world, and most of these classes, if you listen to them, at one point he will say, you are not this body. So this is a good starting point. We sort of figured that out already now, like that we are not this physical body. If we say that we cannot define the self, who we really are, with anything temporary. And in our tradition of yoga, we are not the only ones. Like, look at any spiritual tradition. That conclusion is really widespread. We have Christianity. You live in this body, and you do good or bad deeds, and at the end of the life, you go to heaven or hell, right? But what does the body do? It stays right here, isn't it? The body we bury, but the person then moves on to heaven or hell. So who is moving on? Not the body. So something beyond the body, isn't it? Okay, so maybe it's not quite as direct, but if we look at the philosophy, it's the philosophy of we are not this body. I lived in Australia, Aboriginals, well, they come from the dreamland, they go into the dreamland, and this is just a temporary experience within this body, not the self. Now, if we look at Greek philosophy, we have this idea. Yeah, I mean, I can go on with this, but we have this idea pretty much. We have it in Islam, and of course, we have it in Hindu traditions, and we have it in the Vedas. That we are not this physical body, but we are something beyond this body. And then we established, okay, then we have a quite interesting take on this world. Because if we are not this body, what is then this body? What is it for? And one example that we often get is like it's a vehicle, it's a car, almost like that allows us to move in this world. Right? That we use to interact with this world. It's like a platform that connects us into this three-dimensional physical world. And that we drive from A to B, and then the car crashes, or it's time to leave it, and we get out of the car and maybe get into a new car or get a bicycle or whatever, and this is called reincarnation, right? That this body is like a vessel that holds us for a certain amount of time for a certain purpose. So this is one perspective on it. But then the yogis, they call bodies sharira. Sharira is basically a Sanskrit word for body. And they don't only have this stula sharira, which is the physical body, this thing that we see when we look at each other, but they also talk about the sukshma sharira. And the sukshma sharira, sukshma means like subtle. Like, feinstofflich is good. Subtle or, subtle, huh? Subtle is okay. So, like the sukshma sharira is the subtle body, so they also call the mind and the intellect a body. So not the self, but something that carries the self. Like a body of water carries water, right? And our physical and mental body carries the self, in a sense. That's what a body means. Actually, language is very precise. If we just really think about the words we use every day, they actually tell us a lot about reality. Right? We call this a body. So what is it embodying if it's a body, isn't it? We say it, but we don't realize it, that we say it all the time. Right? So they also says we have this subtle body. And one way that I like to think about it is that if I want to connect to the internet, and let's just for one moment take the comparison that this world, this, virtual realities I might call it, that we call this world, let's just compare it for a moment to the internet. If I, as the person, wants to connect to the internet, I cannot just do that because the internet for me is foreign terrain. I cannot just connect my mind directly into the internet. I need certain bodies to do that. And two bodies that I, for example, use is a computer, which is like a physical shell of plastics and cables and whatnot. And then I connect that computer, that physical part, to... Hi. Then I connect that computer, that physical part, to a software, isn't it? Because the computer is useless without the software. And if I install a software on the computer, suddenly I can access the internet with the combination of these two. So in a sense, the yogis claim that in order to connect to this world that we are just so familiar with, apparently, we need the same. We need a hardware, which is this physical body, and we need a software, which is this mind, to actually interact with it. So the yogis say that we are not only not the body, which is a very common understanding in pretty much any spiritual tradition, right? But that we are also not the mind. That we are something even beyond the mind. So, back to this word yoga. So the idea is therefore that if we are interested in practicing yoga, we probably have the idea that we lost connection to our true self. So we invite a path, a practice, yoga, for example, that reconnects us to who we actually are. And this is actually very interesting. We have this word yoga, which means to reconnect. There's another word that we use a lot, which means exactly the same, just in another language. Many people are a little bit allergic to that word, but it's just interesting. Yeah.
Religion.
Religion, yeah. Religare, from Latin. Ligare, we have it in English, ligament, something that connects. So religare, re-ligamenting, reconnecting. Yeah, religion and yoga are the same words in two different languages. Interesting little side note. So we have this process, we invite this process of religion, of yoga, and there's so many processes. Like even if we look at the word yoga, there is dhyana yoga that we a little bit explore today. And then there is bhakti yoga, of course, very commonly here. There's karma yoga. There's so many different ways of yoga. There's so many different paths of religion. There's many different paths of embarking on this journey of reconnection. But what they have in common is that they claim that we are neither this body nor this mind, but something beyond. That we are actually the essential self, which in Sanskrit is Atma or Jiva, which we often call the soul in English. Right? It's quite common name for it, the soul. So, but even with this word, and there again, like the way we use language is so interesting, we sort of make a abstraction, because we were talking about another way you can look at it is if we were saying whatever is temporary we cannot use as the definition of self. Another way to say it is that whatever we claim as ours cannot be the self. Because if I say, these are my clothes, then immediately you understand these are separate from me. My means I'm here, and there is something that is mine. But now follow language. My body, my thoughts, my emotions, my desires. So whose then, right? Not I thought or I desire, but my thought or my desire. So obviously a thought or a desire is something that we can observe externally from ourselves. So, and then we have this word soul, which is supposed to indicate the true self. But what do we do with the word soul? We say my soul, right? So this is actually a misconception. It should be not my soul, but I soul. And it shouldn't be iPhone, but my phone, right? We sort of, I don't know, we sort of mixed that up. Yeah, we got lost in the process. It's good marketing, this iPhone. It's me, this is who I am. No, it's quite the opposite, actually. Yeah, the Bravo. Quite upset about it as well. Yeah. So, Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, which is a work about, 2,000 to 2,500 years old. Indian history writing is a bit tricky, you know, like we have the Anglo-Saxons, that their stone rolls down the hill, and some history writers will go like, oh, stone rolled down the hill, right? And we have a very precise history writing, but in India a little bit different. time is understood cyclical, and to write down details and dates not so important, right? So it's often kind of really tricky to figure out when was what written. We have some astrological interpretations and so on, but it's just a different understanding of what's important. So Patanjali wrote this Yoga Sutras, and he starts it very nicely. He says, he defines yoga. What is yoga? And he says, yogas chitta vritti nirodha. So chitta is this mind complex that we have. In a sense, the body belongs to the mind in a certain perspective, but chitta is basically this mind consciousness that we have. And if you ever noticed, like, well, if you, little bit work with your mind, it's often quite really intensely engaged with all sorts of things, and it's even sometimes sort of tricky to figure out, to still it in a sense. Like it's going all over the place. Like right now you're trying to listen to this lecture of mine. If I would be there as a listener, it would be a bit of a struggle sometimes. Yeah, you sort of follow along. Maybe I catch you exactly through my mood, then it's easy to follow, but sometimes the mind will go on and go like, okay, 15 more minutes, then it's food time, yay, prasadam, right? Okay, and then you go like, oh no, I should be listening to the class, right? So the mind wanders, it's all over the place. This is very common if you try to still your mind. Have you ever tried not to think? And then not to think that you shouldn't be thinking, because that would be thinking, and you don't want to think, so stop thinking altogether. But also don't think about not thinking about the thinking, right? It's quite tricky to still the mind. So Patanjali actually says, yoga, the definition or the goal of, what we want to achieve through yoga is chitta vritti. Vritti means the turnings, the movements. Yoga's chitta vritti nirodha, to cease, to stop these ever turnings of the mind, to become still. And why? In exactly the next verse, this is already second verse of Yoga Sutra, so he's going up, he's starting really from the top up. He says, tada drashtu svarupe vastanam. Tada, we still have that, right? Tada. We say it still, right? Tada. It's the same in Sanskrit, tada, because then and now, it's like and now and here. Tada, if you achieve that to completely still the mind, tada drashtu, if you do yoga, you might know the drishti, to look at one point. It's the view, right? And then drashtu, the one who sees. Svarupe, in his true form, in his actual form, not this body, not this mind, not this temporary stuff, but the thing that we actually are. Vastanam will be stanam, standing. We still have the word root in English. Stand, to stanam, vastanam, to really be situated. So if yoga's chitta vritti nirodha, if we somehow or other figure out how to calm the mind a little bit, then tadadrashtu svarupe vastanam. At that point, the seer will be firmly established in his own self. So if we heard now all of this, right? And then we hear about yoga as this idea of, okay, maybe I'm not quite certain exactly how to define who I am. Maybe I actually don't know fully. Which is quite a shocking realization if we actually allow it, because not knowing who we are can be a quite scary reality if we move into it. But if we... A question that comes up then, if yoga means to go beyond, then how to do it? And now we started the class a little bit that often the understanding, if you hear the word yoga, is touch your toes with the tip of your nose sort of thing. Physical exercises, what you see in a yoga studio. After what we've heard now for the last half hour, what would you think is the main technique that would help you to go beyond this physical and this mental body, to actually go back toward knowing who the self is? What could be something that you think, oh, this could help? Yes, sir.
Stop breathing.
Stop breathing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's powerful. Yes. 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 Mahakumbhaka, we call it, right? Is possible apparently. Because the movement of the mind triggers, the movement of the breath triggers movement in the mind. The more stressed we are, the quicker. The mind and the breath are in direct relation, right? If you wake up on a Sunday morning, you're completely peaceful, birds are chirping. How is your breath? calm, right? Slow, naturally. If you're in a stressed situation on the way to work and you observe your breath, what's probably happening with the breath? How do you breathe when you're stressed? Have you noticed? Or let's go like how do you breathe when you're angry? Right? Fast and strong and hot. So the breathing, or if you're scared, what happens to the breath? Right? Your mind gets like in a corner and you're like defensive, and the breath represents it. So the breath and the mind are directly related. So yes, in yoga we then work with the mind and try to slow the breath, because that naturally slows the movement of the mind. I have a friend, he does like long dives, and he says he loves it because if he's down there for a couple of minutes not breathing, his mind is null. It just disappears. Interesting. So yes, not breathing is a good idea. The problem with this idea is that it's not so easy, I think. I'm not, if you have some direct tips that don't include dying. Apparently it's possible, but I think it's difficult to. But yeah, that would be a way. But now, if you ask, like, okay, you heard about this yoga. Yoga means you're not this body, apparently. Yoga maybe indicates that you don't quite know who you are. So if we then want to come back to who we actually are, any ideas on how we could start? Yes, sir.
Like you said, no, we so many identifications with temporary things.
Mm-hmm.
So yoga also means plus. So now we connect to that which is not temporary. We connect to absolute reality.
Yeah, nice.
And then we will understand.
Okay, this is really nice point. So then, if we look a little bit, I was saying that okay, I experienced all these changes in my body and my mind in this life, but I'm still quite certain that I'm the same person. I can remember that I've been these other people, even though I've completely changed in so many aspects. Then the question is, of course, what remains? What stayed the same? Why can I remember these states that are completely different to my state now?
Soul remains the same.
Huh?
Soul remains the same.
So soul remains the same. And then this is the question, what is soul? We all perceive soul all the time because soul perceives all the time. Something in us is steadily perceiving all the external changes. Whatever we try to identify ourselves with through the body and the mind, yeah, this is continuously changing, but something remains steady observing the change. So then if we go back to Patanjali, this is what he calls drashtu, the witness or the observer. Yes, we have my thoughts, my desires, my emotions, if we go to the more subtle aspects, but we talk about mind, so there is thoughts, there is emotions, there's desires, which is probably the most subtle thing we can still firmly grasp, that it's real. But we call them mind, so it's external to mind, and something is observing these thoughts, emotions, and desires. Something seems to remain steady. That perceiver, that witness, that 5-year-old body being on the floor hammering because of a plastic lawnmower, and observing that same body sitting here on this stool talking about yogic philosophy to you guys. Something remained steady observing that. And it seems to be like an underlying reality. Patanjali starts his Yoga Sutras with yoga's chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the stilling of the fluctuations of the mind. And one metaphor that is given by the traditional commentators is, yes, it's like if you want to see the bottom of a lake, you need two things. You need clear water and you need no wind, stillness. Because if the water starts to ripple, you cannot penetrate with your glance. Right? So he talks about there's something that actually holds, if we now turn it around, the body and mind in terms of perception, in terms of consciousness. And this is again this I, soul being, the Atma, the true self, is that we are looking for. So again, phrasing that question, if you now think, okay, so my body and mind, maybe they're a little bit dirty waters with a lot of winds of emotions and desires and all sorts of directions, and what do I want to do and what do I not want to do. If we want to still that lake in order to maybe look a little bit deeper at what's actually on its bottom, and you would recommend, just for a friend, but you would recommend a technique. What could be a good technique to achieve that?
Meditate.
Thank you. Meditation, yes. And if we look at the Ashtanga yoga process, then actually all it sort of hints at, so this traditional yoga process of physical exercises, of breathing exercises, of calming the breath. Now there's these Ashtanga yoga, these 8 steps of yoga. First, be a decent human being, that helps. Yeah? Don't steal and don't lie and so on, because try robbing something from a store and then going around the corner meditating would be quite tricky, like hope the cops don't find me, right? It's hard to meditate. Or like don't ahimsa, right? Don't harm anyone. Can you remember the last time you had like a fight with a friend? How long does that stuff bother us, isn't it? Like I have a friend in Australia, he once said something that really upset me, and sometimes I'm sitting there when I'm just spacing out and go like, oh, why did he say that? You know, that was like 4 years ago or so, 5 years ago. This stuff stays with us, right? So first let's be decent human beings, trying to be peaceful in our habits and our behavior, so that we can actually start to meditate. And then let's try to be halfway comfortable with our body, asana. Let's try to have a body that is not bothering us. Actually, Patanjali says the goal of asana is that you don't feel the body. That's interesting, isn't it? Because if you wake up and say, hey, I feel my shoulder, it's probably not a good sign. Probably something's wrong. If you don't feel the body, that's good. I mean, not through any substances. I mean, there's different ways to not feel the body, but I mean like a healthy, complete way to not feel. So this is the goal of asana, of physical movement, that I, for example, can sit in meditation and my meditation is not like, my knees hurt, my lower back aches, this is horrible, right? This is not helpful. So let's find a way where we are comfortable in the body. Then we already talked about pranayama, the connection between breath and the mind. And when a friend is really stressed out, what is the first advice you give to him? Hey man, take a breath, right? Calm down. Actually, when a teacher of mine, he was talking to a group and there was quite some smokers, and he was saying, yes, the smoking is calming you down. Why? You take 5 minutes for breathing consciously. Interesting. So leave away the cigarette and just do the breathing. It's good exercise actually. And you do just that for 5 minutes. The smoking will be no problem anymore. And then comes the gateway, pratyahara, to draw the senses in, because our senses are so engaged in this external world. This is my body, this is my mind, what do I want, how do I get it? Let's go back from that a little bit and focus on my breathing, my feeling, my sensations. Let's turn the awareness into an inner state. It's very nice pratyahara practices. And then starts the inner part of the yoga, which is dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. And these are 3 stages of meditation. To concentrate, to meditate, and to be fully absorbed in the object of meditation. So actually what we nowadays understand to be yoga a little bit is just the tip of the iceberg. What is actually beyond it is a practice of meditation. And this practice of meditation is common in all yoga paths. Karma yoga means work in meditation. Jnana yoga means intelligence, thought, meditating on. Krishna says in the Gita, or it's said in the Gita, about the Gita also, that to study it, for example, is jnana yoga, to like meditate on the meaning. Again, we use that word, now in a more intellectual sense. So we can engage our body, we can engage our mind, we can engage our whole being in meditation, in that process of finding the center again, of finding who we, first of all finding balance, finding center, stilling that lake, to then maybe get a little bit of a perception what's actually at the core of it. So this is the first step of the Vedas, to a little bit understand better who we are. And then, of course, also to inquire, and what is our relationship to reality? So who am I? Who is God? Or some are allergic to the G word, however you want to call it, it's fine. And what's the relationship, right? And what is the reality that comes from that? So I went maybe a little bit all over the place, but I tried to sort of keep that yoga theme. Maybe we have like 20 seconds for questions and comments. Sorry about that. It happens, you know. You get caught up in time. Time I am destroyer of yoga classes. That is what Krishna says himself. But maybe if you have like a quick comment, a question, then we can talk about it. So this is either a really good sign or a really bad sign. Either you're like all satisfied or you're really hungry. Okay, there you go.
After all these years of meditation, what would you say? Who are you?
Oh. Okay, let's eat now. Well, the problem is, you know what a tesseract is? Have you heard that? A tesseract is a 4-dimensional cube represented in a 3-dimensional reality. So you can, bear with me for a moment, you can represent a 3-dimensional cube on a 2-dimensional piece of paper. Have you done that? Right? You draw 4 lines, and then you basically double those lines in an extra dimension backwards. So you take 3 extra lines per line to make it into the next dimension. And if you know the 3rd dimension, and you see on a 2-dimensional piece of paper a cube that is drawn 3-dimensionally, you immediately know what it's supposed to be. And you can imagine it because you have direct experience of the actual 3-dimensional thing. So a tesseract, and please Google it when it's cool. It's really nice. There's like cool scientific videos about it. A tesseract is the idea that you can do the same thing with a 3-dimensional cube. I think this is not quite a cube, and I shouldn't use it as a model. But you know, if you have a 3-dimensional cube, and then you will like make 3 extra cubes per side of the cube again, then you can, in a 3-dimensional world, build a tesseract, which, just as the 2-dimensional cube with the extra lines represents the 3-dimensional, the tesseract in the 3-dimensional represents the 4-dimensional. The thing is, though, that blows our mind because we don't have a direct perception of 4th dimension. The 3-dimension thing on the 2-dimension, that's okay because we sort of exist in 3 dimensions. So a tesseract is then basically a trying to, within the 3-dimensional realm, hint at what is 4-dimensional. But at the same time, it will not be able to directly answer it. It will just be able to push us in the direction. The only way to actually know what a 4-dimensional cube is to experience it. So in many ways, for example, my personal understanding of a scripture like the Bhagavatam, if you studied it probably for a little while, there is like statements and ideas in there where you go like, this is ridiculous. This doesn't make any sense in our 3-dimensional way. Yeah, because it's describing a higher dimensional reality trying to use the words of 3 dimensions. So we got like children sucking on the toe of the moon and things. And you go like, okay, this must be a children's story. No, it's a way from people who through deep meditation experienced higher dimensional reality tries to convey that now into our 3-dimensional world. Because how are you going to do it? How am I going to show, like chakras is a good idea. A good example, right? If you Google what is a chakra, you get like these 7 chakras in different colors, and that's their form and that's their mantras. But that's not actually what they are. There's a yogi who went inside and perceived these energetical fields, comes back out of the meditation, and people ask them, what did you experience? And he goes like, okay, I'll try to draw it. But this is not actually the thing. The thing is, what is the experience? So you see, I'm building a nice little escape route out of your question. and I guess like the process of realization is a steady one. We might get glimpses, like Bhaktisiddhanta said, like drops of honey, right, from the glass. We get like a taste of what it is, and so we approach. It's like when you drive on the road in the morning, you only see like a few lines, and the further you drive and time evolves, you see more and more of reality. So it's a gradual process. So to like tell you after years of meditation what myself is, I don't know how to put it in words. Because per definition, the 3-dimensional vocabulary that we use to communicate is not sufficient to describe it. Oh, that was a nice way out, wasn't it? Sort of intellectually confusing, yeah. Intellectually confusing. It's always a good way. But if I answer the question just like in a childish way, then I realized that the more I meditate and the further I go, the more I realize how I'm a very small particle in a beautiful, massive picture. And the further I move, the smaller my part becomes, and the greater my appreciation from what I'm part of grows. And Sanatana Goswami says the symptom of spiritual advancement is humility. I think that's a really nice meditation. The further we go on the path, we can judge it. If the humility grows, then the direction is correct. So, more and more I realize that I'm a humble servant. Yeah. And I hope the more I meditate, the humbler I'll get, and the more service I'll do. Jivara Svarupa Hoy Nitya Krishna Das. That's the Sanskrit for it. Thank you. Nice question.
You have talked about the soul. To whom belongs your soul?
To whom belongs my soul? Ooh.
Yes.
So we meet next Sunday to discuss. Why belong? Why not? It's nice to be a drop of water in the ocean, no?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And this, and if this drop of water of the whole ocean joins to the ocean, then you will know who you are.
Yes.
Yes. You will really know.
But you might also remember that you were never separated in the first place.
Yes.
Wow, now it's getting really far out. Ooh, it's getting like this mystic yogic touch. Nice, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Shall we eat?
Yes.
So thank you for listening. Yes. Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Jai Nitya Go Premanande.
Thank you, Prabhu, for speaking on the topic of meditation. Just one announcement. Please, can I have your attention, please? Next Sunday, it's a special day. It's an auspicious day. It's the appearance day of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You can see him on the left part of the altar on the right side. He is a form of Lord Krishna, a form of mercy, and he appeared 500 years ago to give us this process of meditation, of chanting the holy name. And next Sunday is his appearance day. And since it's a special day, our Sunday program is going to be a little different. So we will start with 3 o'clock of Kirtan, but we will continue for 3 hours. So we will start with 3 o'clock. We have Kirtan. At 5 o'clock there will be a bathing ceremony for the lordships.